Hello and welcome to the De-Stress podcast with me, Dr. Amanda. On this podcast, I explore all the underestimated impacts that stress can have on our lives, our health, and our bodies. And I do this by having fascinating conversations with experts and everyday people. First of all, I've got to say Happy New Year to you all. Thank you so much for joining me again. I know that we've had a bit of a break. I am somebody that doesn't like to wait until the new year or something to get started with my goals. And I've had season 2 of the podcast in the works for months. I've done so many interviews. I was just like, you know what? I don't care that the new year's coming up. Let me just start. And so I gave you 3 episodes that I think people have really enjoyed and have had some good feedback on. But then life got a bit busy, and in true fashion, I am trying to practice what I preach. And over the Christmas period, December, the start of January, things were just so busy for me. It was my first time actually having the festive period where I have like 2 active children. My eldest had her fourth birthday party, her fourth birthday, and I did her first birthday party, and so that was quite busy. And then just lots of things happening with work and family, and let's be quite honest, I was feeling really tired and quite burnt out. And so I didn't want to start putting out the podcast and doing it in a way that I wasn't going to be engaging with you all. And so we're back now into the new year. And I've been racking my brain about which interview I should show to you next. There are some great ones coming up. We've got ones about gut health coming up. I've got some interviews with some lifestyle medicine specialists. I've got some couple interviews coming up, and I just was thinking, which one should I share with you? Because there's about 9 interviews that we need to share. And I decided to kick off the year that I wanted to sit down with my favourite person in the world. That's my husband, Raf. And we actually have sat down with another couple who I find so inspirational and was so excited when they accepted my invitation to come and have a talk. So basically, I know that one of the biggest stressors, and as well as one of the biggest stress relievers in life, is having positive relationships. And one of the biggest, most committed relationships that we can have is our marriages. And I know that when we're in a difficult season of our marriage, it can cause a lot of stress. But when we are going through stress, having that support and that partner can be so important. Often, I feel like marriage is, gets a bad rep. We always hear that marriage is so hard, and although there are definitely hard seasons, marriage can be something that's so beautiful. And so as part of this podcast, we've got an ongoing series going on called Marriage Matters. And that's where I sit down with my husband, Raf, and sometimes the 2 of us will have a conversation. There's one that we had last season. And sometimes we will sit down with other couples and discuss their marriage, their journeys, and any stresses that they've had to navigate through. And this week, I am so excited to tell you that we are sitting down with Mbeutcha and Donald. Mbeutcha, she is one part of the incredible podcast Black Moms Upfront, and in that podcast she's very candid about sharing her journey of motherhood and life and how it impacts her as a Black British mom, and I believe she's of Ghanaian descent. But she's also alluded a lot of the times during that podcast to her and her husband and some of the journeys that they've been on. They have 5 children. They are Christians. She homeschools some of her children, and they've gone through different health scares. And so I just wanted to sit down and have this conversation with them. And honestly, it was incredible. The things that I took away from it in my marriage and for my life was really helpful. And just the conversation was great. I'm going to let you go and have a listen to it now. And next episode, because this one is actually quite a long one, I would get a cup of tea, I'll get yourself comfortable. There's just so many interesting things they share with us. I would actually recommend sitting down with your partner as well, if you are married, and listening to this together. And I'm next, because it is quite long, I'm actually just going to go straight into it now. And then in next week's episode, I'm going to share with you some of my goals for the new year and what the aim is, what things I'm trying to achieve this year. But enjoy this episode, and I will check in with you at the end. So hello, Donald. Hi, Mbeutcha. Thank you so much for joining us on the De-Stress podcast. How are you both doing?
Thank you for having us. We're very well, thank you.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be with you and to
de-stress.
I can distress. Yeah.
I love that. I always like to start the podcast with saying how or why, I've asked you to come on and be a guest on here. And basically, I'm a massive fan of the Black Moms Upfront podcast. And so, Nanadja, you are one of 5, but there's maybe 7 of you now. There's quite a
we've got
group.
a little tribe going on.
Yeah.
Where we need to
yes,
get as many diverse voices as we can.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to it.
Oh yeah, I love it. I'm missing it, but I understand, we all need breaks sometimes. But yeah, and because of that, through the podcast, I got to it's always weird when you meet somebody that you have followed but don't know personally, because you feel like, oh, you know them, but then you meet like, oh, actually no, we don't actually know each other like that. But that's what happens, isn't it? So I feel like I've had quite a bit of insight into from what you've shared into your life and bits about your marriage with Donald, and I just thought it would be so great to sit down with you and have a conversation, because I know there'll be a lot that you've got to share.
Yeah, I mean, this is the danger of podcasting, because you talk. Well, I do. I just talk, forget what I've shared. So as you're saying this, I'm like, what have you heard? I'm trying to remember what I've actually shared, how embarrassing it is, or did I tell Donald that I was sharing it?
Yeah.
What are you about to come out with? But
I've been accosted sometimes in public, and it's like, oh, you're so and so, and I know about you. I'm like, you do?
Gosh, you might get subjected to that now that I'm on this pod. This is my thing. I'm not someone that shares lots with people, but my problem is I talk a lot, and so you may not know anything about me, but once you come and talk to me, like the floodgates open. This is why I don't have too many friends.
No, looking forward to this conversation.
Okay, real.
But yeah, so obviously, Amanda's already said why we're here. I guess it's almost like bringing your husband to work day. But,
yeah, it is. It feels like that, doesn't it? Right?
Yeah, it really does, man. But obviously, I don't know anything about either of you, so I guess it'd be good to start with how you guys got together, how you met, who stole whose heart.
Yeah, I love a good love story.
Who's going? Am I talking?
You go.
All right. Well, we've known each other about 25 years, probably since we were about 12. And we met at a Christian conference, a Catholic kind of family retreat that you go away for the week with your family, about 2,000 people there. But I spotted him, and I think he spotted me. No.
No?
No, to be honest, we were just friends. We like, you know what it's like at that age, like 12, 13, 14, like you just have a little group of people, and we would go back every year. The baby's waking up. It's a yearly conference. And so we would go back every year and just hang out, really. And then I think by the time we got to about the age of 18 or so, I think a kind of love interest had started to blossom. And we got together, well, it was for a short time, really. And then we split up for a good few years, maybe 3 years, 4 years, something like that. And then I didn't realize that Donald still had feelings for me. I thought we were just kind of platonic friends, and but no, I pulled him in strong.
Well, I won't go that.
You're locked in.
So eventually we did get back together when we were about 23, and got married at 26. That's it, really. We've recently celebrated this year our 10th wedding anniversary.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank
I love
you,
that. Do you agree with that story, Donald? Because sometimes there are different versions.
I've said the very, very mild, tame version.
Yeah, there's a lot of granularity that I can go into, and even I agree with some of it, but the detail and context, you need to. It's for a different pod.
Okay.
That's the gist of it.
That's the general gist of it, but I don't know about the pulling me strong part, but most of it, I think she fell head over heels for me, and the rest is history. I mean, who wouldn't? So
There you go.
yeah, it was. Yeah, no, I was, the only thing I'll add to that is I was her brother's best friend. Make of that what you will.
Oh,
So
that bit was awkward.
Yeah, I
Oh,
was saying.
yeah.
Okay.
Especially at that age as well. Because I've actually had friends that have gone out with like a friend's sibling and it hasn't worked well for the relationship. Like the
Yeah.
friendship has just kind of dissolved. But it works out well when you married them and you go on to have kids, you know.
I
Like
mean, it was definitely awkward in the beginning when I was like, yeah, so you know Donald, we're together now.
and our mums knew each other.
Yeah. And I was living with my brother at the time when we got together. And so,
Okay.
yeah, there was,
So he'd know when you were going out
yeah,
to
there
see
was
it.
so many layers of awkwardness.
Yeah.
But it's all good now.
Yeah, you made it through.
Yeah.
You're all a
We're
happy
not that
family.
too much.
Yeah. So
But the things I really understand, like the dynamics you're talking about with church and everything. So we met through church as well. And but you're both Catholic.
Yeah.
We're Seventh-day Adventist, so like another big denomination, and we also have like an annual kind of what we call camp meeting where all the churches and everyone comes together, and that's how you get to meet people from all over the country and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I can understand that kind of dynamic and where you start to become like, you know, their families, like, you know, a lot of the time when people come together in relationships, it's like you two come together and you kind of cement your relationship and then the families come in afterwards.
Yeah.
Whereas it's different with when you, depending on when you meet them in church. But for example, I knew Raf's mom before I knew you.
Did you?
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's weird.
yeah, like so I knew
But
like I had a relationship with your mom first.
Even Donald, he's got two younger brothers, and because I was quite close to them, they used to refer to me as their big sister. And so some people actually thought that I genuinely was their big sister. So then when Don and I got together, there were some confused people because they were like, I thought you were
some
siblings.
bombastic side eyes.
Yeah.
And then they had to backtrack about, no, she's not actually really my sister. Like, this isn't weird. Like, I promise you, she's just a friend, but she's like a sister. And it was like, oh, dear. We're not family. No blood relation there.
But that's the thing though, and also with how young you got together as well, it's just the evolution that happens with it. So for example, so me and Raf, I was 19 and Raf was 23. And so literally my entire adulthood, I've been so yeah, my entire adulthood I've been with Raf. And so part of it with marriage, so in this whole conversation is going to be about kind of the navigating the different stresses that come in life and in a marriage and how to kind of stay together through it and how you navigate through it. And something that I've found is how much I've changed, or how much we've both changed in that time, because 19-year-old Amanda, second year of uni, no kids, no, like, compared to me now in my 30s, 2 children, like working, I'm a completely different person to where I was when I was 19. And I've seen like friends, you know, people who have been together quite young, but that evolution, they don't always come together on it. And it's difficult. I think that's like a difficult thing for some people to like navigate, you know, the change between the two of you.
But would you say that you've changed, like, although your lifestyle has changed, do you think you as a person you've changed?
Do you think I don't know.
I think we definitely both have.
Yeah, so I think the fundamentals of it are the same, maybe, as in like I've still got the same kind of personality. But I remember Raf saying a lot when we first started dating, he just loved how like carefree and, you know, up for anything. With those, I don't know if we would use those same words to describe me now. I want to be, but you know, like there's a lot of responsibilities now. Yeah, so I feel like some of that has changed because I'm not like that. Yeah, because of life. And I think I was quite ditzy. People used to call me Hillary from Fresh Prince.
Oh wow!
And I don't think anyone would call me that now. I'm like very.
Look at you now, doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like the change there, just kind of navigating that. I don't know if you found that at all, like that you've changed a lot, or
I've changed because before I'm very much what you're describing there. I can relate to. I was like carefree. I was the joker. Even like I remember my mum even saying to me like, one day when you do die, people won't actually think you're dead because you joke about literally everything. It was all about banter. That's all about, for me, it was like life is just a big joke. And I think, and you were quite serious, weren't you? Like when we first got together.
Donald thinks I've sucked the fun out of him, basically.
Yeah.
That's what he says. Like when we got together, he was really fun, and now he's serious because of me.
Yeah, and I think it's not just that. I think it's, like you said, it's responsibilities, isn't it? It's kind of, it sobers you up. You know, whereas before you'd be like, oh wow, let's go and climb that mountain, or let's go and do a backflip off that, or let's do a prank. You kind of think about the repercussions of it and the responsibilities. Kind of go, oh man, that's so long. First of all, I'm too tired to go and climb any mountain. 2, I hate climbing now anyway. 3, it's cold outside and the kids are probably going to wake up like in the next hours. So you start going through this process of nah. Before it was, this is a brilliant idea. It's an adventure. But you also start realizing that those adventures come with consequences. They're fun at the time, but that fun gets like, it's like even going on a night out. I remember I remember Carnival, when I went back to Carnival and I went on a night out and I came back and you were working the next morning, and I came back at 4:00 in the morning and you were going to work at 5, and I had 3 of the kids at home.
Oh,
and I was like, oh, I remember calling my brother and just crying and being like, I can't do this.
I know, like that's the thing. It's when the kids come into it.
Well, I think that's what, because obviously when we talk about changing and stuff, I think even with the career and just advancing in age and things like that, I think it was only when the kids came really that I'd say that I would have changed. And I think even on fundamentals as well. I used to always say before having kids, I was like, listen, anyone touches my child, like they are finished. It's over. They're dead. I will happily wake up in prison every morning knowing that I protected my child. Whereas now I'm like, but if I'm in prison, I can't then be with my child and continue to be my child. So like even little things like that, like that's been my biggest I guess motivator for change. Having kids rather than before then, even up to when Izzy was born, I was out every night. I'd be at the gym, squash, American football. I was full speed ahead. And that was with work as well. So
that's true. You know what Raf used to do? We used to be out places or like meeting people out with some friends. There'd be new people there, and Raf would just say some wild things, and I'd sit there be like, would you really do that?
Top 5 of Raf's wildest things.
I remember once we had like a group. We just moved from Leeds down to Birmingham. We had like a group of people over, like church friends, and we were trying to, make new connections.
It's not actually that interesting, to be fair. We can just move on to the next segment.
I definitely want to know.
I want to know now.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, don't you just want to just things that he says. He was like, yeah, you know what I want to do? I want to like rob a bank. Like that's like the experience I want to have. I want to have the experience of robbing the bank. And we're like, oh yeah, to get the money. We don't actually want to rob the bank. And he's like, no, I want to have the experience like holding, like people being scared of me holding a gun to their head. And I'm like,
yeah. Obviously, with the caveat that I would get away with it.
Okay, just add that in there.
I don't think you would now.
He used to say wild things like that, and just.
But
you never did anything like that. Don't get me wrong, guys. He wasn't actually a criminal. He never did anything like that. But you say wild stuff like that. You don't do that so much now. I think like consequences and just like.
Well, no, I said it with chest, and
You did.
I did definitely believe it at the time.
And I was like, what is going on?
I don't know whether that's a male thing, because the trouble is, I wouldn't go that wild, but I'll be like, I want to go to, I don't know, Spain for 6 weeks, and I'll go. Or I want to go to Egypt 6 times this year, and I literally just went.
Yeah, but this is pre-kids though.
No, this is
pre-kids. But that's where your mind wasn't it? Like just
just everywhere.
Let's just do all the stuff. But I think Yeah, I think we've changed, but it's good that we've managed to change kind of like together. You know, with the evolution, it's not like I've gotten less ditzy and more serious, and I don't know, it sounds all negative. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's bad that I'm not as carefree and all that kind of stuff. But it's not like Raf is the big joker. And it's not like I became more serious and more responsibility and he was still where he was. I think that's sometimes where relationships can kind of start to drift apart, but I think we've kind of evolved together with it, or tried to at least. Like even on the little things like health journey and stuff like that, or our relationship with God as well, and with Christianity as well. I think that from when we first met, I feel like we were much more, not fundamentalist, I wouldn't say that at all, but like you know, more traditional and less questioning of things. And I think that's because like I was like, you know, quite young, but as life has gone on, I've seen more things. I think I've gotten a bit more, we've both started to not question, but have our own understanding and meaning of things rather than what we were told before. But it's good that we've both gone on that journey together, because if say you say very traditional and not questioning anything, and I was questioning everything and went quite like all over the place, I feel like that could be another sticky area as well. But it's just interesting getting somebody so young, because of course, like there's a lot of people that I see who don't meet somebody until they're in their 30s, where you're very established and you've probably had that seriousness has happened now, you've had a career, you understand the repercussions of things, you know, like who you are, and then you meet somebody who's in that same position. I think it's quite different to being like in your early 20s, your teens, figuring things out, and then you meet somebody and then figuring it out together.
I think I'm just trying to think back to kind of our mindset. I think myself and Donald were very different. And yeah, I definitely was the kind of more serious one, I'd say, but not serious as in like kind of boring, but just I wasn't as much of a joker. He's mouthing that I am boring. I probably am now, yeah.
But then she was fun.
Yeah, then I was more adventurous. But yeah, we weren't so different.
I was more like, I was more like,
but even in faith, even in our faith,
I think even in faith,
Donald wasn't really practicing his Christianity.
No, I was practicing. I think back then we viewed faith differently, and I've always been a big believer of, I think you need to live your faith rather than actually sit in the pulpit every Sunday, and then once you leave church, you just become someone else and you just go there just to be the pious element of it. I've always been a big proponent and believer in, you actually have to live it. I'd much rather live it and not read the Bible than read the Bible and not live it. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I've always been a big believer of that. Now that there's probably, and I think you've been a big believer of the other way, that you need the Bible to feed how you live it, right? And even that alone, I've grown in that and seen the benefit of the other part of it. And I think it's through our marriage and through how I've grown in that journey and in that faith journey, but also understanding that there is a balance to be struck for the kids. And I don't know if it's the kids that have made me, because when you're kind of putting that out to the kids, you also have to give them that balance, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's the balance of choice that has also changed me from a faith perspective, the balance of choice for the children, not enforcing it onto them like it was enforced onto me when I was their age, but rather giving them the choice. And I think just little things like that are what are, the changes that have happened as we've just got older and older and older, and we've grown together. Well, you've grown more stubborn, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just interesting time, isn't it? Time just changes so many things, but it's nice to see that so much has stayed together. But a big thing that's changed for you as well is that, you know, introduction of children. And me and Raf, we only have 2, but I don't think we mentioned yet how many, you've got 5 children, haven't you? Yeah. Between 9 and 1.
Yeah.
13 months. And you said that you've been married 10 years as well. So so you've been like so children were introduced very early on then, isn't it, in your marriage?
Yeah, our daughter was born, I think, a week after our first wedding anniversary.
Okay.
And I don't think we were very open when, well, as we were preparing for marriage, we didn't have an intention of kind of rushing into parenthood and on
Mhm.
trying to plan it that way. We were 26,
No,
and
I
I
think we did.
well, hold on. We were 26, and to begin with, we said, "Oh no, let's wait till after we're 30," kind of thing. Like
Mhm.
weren't in any particular rush. But then during our marriage preparation kind of courses and sessions that we were doing with the priest who married us, one of the weeks he asked us, like, "So what's the plan for children?" And we're like, "Oh,
Mhm.
well, someday in the future." And he was like, "Okay, fine. Why is that?" And we had no good reason. We had absolutely no reason why we were waiting other than, I don't know, like we're just 26, like let's just wait. Like we just
Yeah.
didn't have anything to say for it.
Mm.
And he said, "Okay, look, at the end of the day, it's entirely up to you, you two as a couple. But as Christians, and specifically as Catholics, when we say our wedding vows, we say that we will be open to any children that God gives us as well. And unless we have what would be called a serious reason, and only we can really deem what that serious reason is, whether that's mental health, whether that's 2p in the bank, whether that's whatever it is, or I don't know, you just started some real huge project and it's gonna, I don't know, it's up to you as a couple. But unless there is a serious reason, you should be open to having children if they come. And so he didn't force it on us, but he just kind of challenged us a little bit. We went away and thought about it, and we realized actually, yeah, we agree with him, and we do think that is right. And lo and behold, a few months into marriage, I got pregnant, and then just keep getting pregnant. We're up to 5.
So did you have a? Cause I'm guessing you spoke out about it, but did you have a number in mind when you spoke about children?
Not at all.
I always knew, and I think I said this at the time, that we'll have over what our parents did. Both our parents had 3.
Okay.
So I was like, in my mind, I always knew I think
probably 3, yeah, because I think
3
3 was a normal number for us.
3 was that's what we
grew up
used
with.
to. But in my mind, and I think you spoke about this as well, actually. That at least we'll do one better than our parents. Right?
Did you know that?
Yeah, that we're like our parents have done 3. My mum, my grandparents, they had 9. But I was like, nah, I'll stick to one.
We don't need to get that.
Yeah, I was like, come on, like, so I knew that would at least match our parents at the very minimum. But I didn't think we'd have 5, well, 6. But yeah, it's
6?
yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
You expect it? You say 6?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Our 4th baby.
Yeah.
We had a girl and she died during the pregnancy.
Oh, okay.
So,
sorry.
Yes. So I guess we have I've had 6 babies. I've
Yeah.
labored 6 times,
Yeah.
and it's been a lot. My body can feel it.
Yes.
Doesn't look it though, but yeah.
That's good.
Spit them bars, bro.
But that's the thing, like, it's amazing that you had that decision, you stuck with it, because we're at the point now, we were like, oh yeah, let's have 3 kids. We've got 2 now.
Listen, we said we was like, yeah, 3 kids sounds really good.
Yeah, this is great because we both, and I guess outdoing our parents, we both grew up with like two in our house.
But then when we had the first one, I was like, 1. Okay.
Oh, were you? I was
1.
like 3.
Yeah, 1. Yeah. That sounds perfect. Yeah. And it was only once she became, I guess, a bit more difficult to entertain. That was like, oh wait, maybe we should go for another one. And I saw her playing with her friends, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, she needs a partner. 2's a good number.
Yeah, I don't know.
Five's a good number too. So
5's a good
It
number
is that.
too.
Yeah, that's a football team. That's a football team.
there you go.
Yeah.
You know what? I feel like the more we've had, the more blessings we've also received. Like we're not people who have got large families around us, like cousins and aunts and uncles and all of that. We haven't got loads of money. We haven't got a huge house. Like we haven't got loads of things that people would probably expect that we do have because we've got 5 kids. But I do firmly feel like because we have kind of honored God in being kind of open to it, we've received the blessings as well. And whether it's the little family that we have or local friends or other people just giving us stuff, like we don't want, and the kids don't want, well, they do want, they always want something, but they don't, you know what they're like, but they've got so much, like
they've got in abundance. I think they're spoiled because I say all the time,
and it's not even from us. And every time we have a baby, like once the baby's finished using that stuff, we do get rid of everything. And people often say, oh, does that mean you're done then? And I say, well, I know that if we do have another baby, like God will give us more again. Like, let me not hold on to these things. Let's bless someone else in the same way that other people have blessed us by giving us prams or car seats or clothes or whatever it is. So for me, I do feel like would we be open to having another baby? Of course, if that's what God wants to do. And I'm not worried in the sense of like, oh, how will I manage? Or like, I know Donald has different kinds of stresses being a man and whatever's kind of innate to him about providing. But I know that the providence will be there should that happen. So I just try to remain a bit relaxed about it.
That is incredible. Like, that is incredible faith. That's really inspirational, because for me, I'm just such a planner. I'm such a type A person. Like, and I need to have that. Often when you stop planning, it gives space for God, you know, so it gives opportunity for the blessings. It gives opportunity for that spontaneity, you know, for God to work in ways that you would never imagine. And I've seen that happen in the last couple of years in our life and stuff, but still there's often that thing that kind of holds you back a little bit. And what you're saying there, you've got 5 children and you said that they're, you know, you feel like they're spoiled. That's such an amazing thing, isn't it? To have 5 and, you know, to feel like they have everything that they need in abundance, and then you have so many blessings. Whereas for me, I think sometimes I worry about having another and being able to provide and everything for them, and the extra, you know, just the extra everything that comes with another child.
When you think about it, is like before you had one, you thought about the extra, right? But then when the one came, it was no longer a thought. You just made it work.
Yeah.
And when 2 came, you were like, you thought about the extra, but then you just made it work. And it's kind of like that's what happened. Like I think genuinely, that's what's happened is when baby's here, you just make it work. Like the first year they're on milk or formula or whatever. Then the second, then they eat food. Then you just cook that little bit more. It's like another handful of rice that you put in, another cup of rice that you're putting in, another bit of chicken that you're putting. Like it just happens naturally, and it doesn't feel. If you were going from like 0 to quadruplets, I get it. You'll be like, well, okay. But when you're going from one to the next, one at a time, it just becomes like, I just feel like you don't feel it until you look at the bill. But Raf is with me there.
Yeah, he's like sweating.
Yeah,
the bill.
Woo! Like they're gonna eat all of that, but it's you don't feel it that much. The jump is not that much, as you know. And I've always said, once we stop buying nappies, I don't want to go back to buying nappies. So if we're gonna have another one, I don't want to go back to like, okay, we're out of nappies.
You don't want a 10-year gap.
Yeah, now we're going back to buying nappies. I don't want that.
Nah, I hear that. That's me. Baby stage, and then
because obviously, well, as well, because you don't want the sleep to actually set in and then you lose it again. But because this is about stress, this is a little bit like a hang up that I have. So how do you deal with the stress of obviously providing for those kids? You buy a bunch of bananas. That bunch of bananas is done in a day. How do you deal with that stress?
But that's so true. I love that example because that is our life. That is true. And loaf of bread is gone in a day and a half.
Yeah.
They all want a sandwich. It's done.
Yeah, that's it. That's the whole loaf done, isn't it?
Milk. Like I used to always complain about milk. Like I'll buy a bottle of milk and within a day it's gone.
He'd be asking me, like, he'd come in from work, like, what happened to all that food? What happened to those biscuits? What happened? I said,
Yeah.
what do you think? We ate it. Yeah, but how much of it are you eating?
Yeah.
It's like one each. Yeah.
And he couldn't get his head around it. It wasn't until
for
like
a while.
working from home kind of came in that he actually saw, oh right, so they're not just throwing it in the bin or kicking it around. Like,
Yeah.
It's actually been eaten. Yeah.
It's the toilet roll that gets me as well.
But these are the things that people don't think about. Like,
no, it's
But
the
you don't have to
toilet
think
roll.
about
no,
it.
I know. I mean, but when
Yeah.
like the things that you take for not even for granted, but the everyday things that you use, you don't realize how much you use it, and other people use it as well.
The thing is, Ralph, is my kids will go in and they'll throw a whole bag of toilet roll in the toilet, like the youngest one, right?
They're wiping and wiping.
They just keep going. They just keep going, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, so we'll buy like 25-pack toilet roll. You think it would last like at least a month.
Yeah.
Come back and there's half bits of toilet paper all around the house because someone has decided that it doesn't live in the toilet anymore, and they've just dragged it around the house. And I'm like, it doesn't grow on trees. Well,
no, that's that's the thing in it, because whilst they're learning, they've got to learn on your stuff.
Yeah.
You got to learn how to wipe your bottom with just like just a normal amount of toilet paper. You got to learn how to wipe your bottom, but the learning process is with the toilet roll you're buying.
Yeah, so no, it is exactly that, Ralph. And like you said, when you buy a bunch of bananas, it literally generally goes within a day. My son can easily Malachi can easily have 3 or 4 bananas a day.
If we're not watching, he just sneaks them.
He literally just goes and eats them because he loves bananas. And he would just eat. He would just go and hide, take a banana and just eat it.
Did you find it stressful then? Like,
yeah.
Do you find it stressful?
Yeah, because you're constantly thinking to yourself, it's like, you know, when you go to Vegas and you're playing and you press the thing and it goes, shing. That's what it feels like. Like, that's a money counter literally disappearing. Like, it's constantly going. And like, we've got one at school now, and I see it more because there's uniform to buy, there's socks to buy, there's a jumper to buy, there's this after school club, there's what ballet that she does, there's dance, there's all of this stuff. And where the boys are homeschooled as well, it's like all the activities that they're doing during homeschool that is constantly something. And you think to yourself, you become so good at mental maths because you're just kind of doing somersaults in your head trying to think, right, this has to go here, I have to spread that has to last to here, and all the rest of it. So, and even with work, it becomes like you can't fail. You can't allow yourself to fail. Like I'm like driven anyway, but there's that added, I need to get what, like, my kids, I can't afford to fail, basically.
Yeah, you can't stand still.
Yeah, you can't stand still. So
but I can see that stress for Don does him no good.
Yeah,
I've seen it have like real repercussions on his health, on his mental health as well. But while I might be saying, like, Don, like, chill, like, we're okay, or it doesn't matter if like we kind of hit rock bottom, like we'll come back up. Like, I'm trying to just say, like, just like relax a bit, but he can't. That's not an option for him. And I'm like, listen, it's not gonna be any good if you're not no longer on this earth. Like, you've got to de-stress.
Yeah. And so because my question is, so you've had this, I guess, the pressure of not being able to fail because, you know, you've got the responsibilities, you've got the children at home, you've had that from the start when you got married. So, you know, like you said, just as you had your first anniversary, your daughter was born. For us, we had a nearly 4 or 5 years of marriage before we started having children. And so I guess we had a period where we may not have had the stress, not, you know, the pressure. of having to constantly provide, because, you know, say we don't, say like before you have kids and you run out of money at the end of the month, okay, we'll just eat some bread and butter, like we're calling it, you know, we'll survive. But the kids, they want their stuff, and they need their stuff, they need their nutrition, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so there's that pressure there. But you've had that, well, because you've been parents for so long and from the start of your marriage. How do you de-stress? It's great that you've got, and this is why it's good in a partnership having that. And that's why I always think, oh, with single parents, you know, how you deal with that pressure when it's just you. But having that voice from you, Najwa, saying, no, it's going to be all right, and just that reminding voice. But how do you practically deal with that stress? Because 9 years of constant, I'm hoping there's been some moments where you've been able to regularly get a little bit of downtime or navigate through that, or is it a never off switch? Or am I challenging you to find a way?
I almost, the part of me that wants to hide and be like, yeah, of course there's been that part, but the transparent and authentic part of me is kind of like, no, there's never been that off switch for me. There's been a constant enjoyable, that's what I would add, because I'm not doing it out of vain for myself. And Leonardo would tell you, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. Like, I'm always thinking big picture, pie in the sky ideas. What can we do? And the thing is, I always have the audacity to go and try and make it happen. And sometimes to my detriment, but a lot of the time it's kind of, there is that moment of, oh, it's brilliant when it comes together, and it kind of means that we can do the next part of our lives. But it never stops. It generally never stops. It's always, right, what's the next step? What do we do next? How do I make sure that, you know, we can live in a bigger house? How do I make sure that we can have a bigger car? Not even a bigger, well, we do need a bigger car now, but how do I make sure that we've always got food on the table, that just the basics, just being able to do, and I've always said, although I say my kids are spoiled, I also hate saying no to my kids. I hate the idea of not
this isn't no to like wild random things. No, they're not kids who just go and ride a pony or whatever. No, it's more if they said, I wanted an apple, you'd be like, right, I'm gonna get them the apple.
Yeah.
More that kind of.
So it's that, and yeah, there is no kind of being completely transparent. I don't think there's an off button until I think the youngest gets to a stage where they can make decisions for themselves that enables them to make something from themselves, right? In the sense that so it's not even about creating a safety net for them, but it's more about creating a space and allowing a space for them to be able to make decisions for themselves that enables them to create that safety net for themselves. Because I don't believe in just giving.
So with obviously with that constant on switch, and I don't know if it's the same for both of you, so you're always constantly switched on. How do you, because that is stressful, how are you able to continue to give your like the best version of yourself, and how do you support each other in order for you to give that best version of yourself? Because I know for me,
to the kids,
well to the kids and to each other, because I know for me, I guess I'm selfish in a way, because I know that if I don't go to the gym, or if I don't get to release stress playing a sport, I know that I'm not going to deliver the best of myself. So I have to be able to switch off at some point. If I don't do that, then like when a machine's been running for a really long time, it doesn't function right. You need to obviously turn it off, turn it back on. And that's how I work. So how do you guys, if it is that you're both constantly on, how do you support each other and get that best out of each other still?
I actually don't think I stress much. That's what. Do you think I stress? I don't get stressed. I'm not saying that's because I'm never in a stressful situation. Recognize tough situations completely. The kind of thing that would stress me out would just be like, you're kind of,
I'm late for London.
I don't know, yeah, maybe I was running late, or
like in the moment kind of.
yeah, or if I need to, I'm out with my 3-year-old and he decides that he wants to run into the middle of the road for jokes, that kind of thing. But like,
chicken with the car.
Yeah, and that's a very real situation for us that we're going through at the moment. But the normal stresses of life, I don't find stressful. And you know what? One thing that I realized recently is that I think part of the reason I don't get stressed is that I have taken my own life into my hands. Like so I home educate most of the children. It's only my eldest who started school at age 7.5. And school I find stressful, because when you home educate, you're marching to the beat of your own drum. You're doing what you want. You're not under someone else's rule and timetable and pattern and all that kind of thing. And now that she's 9, and up until this stage, she hasn't really done kind of extracurricular activities, because I couldn't fathom how on earth I could do something with her after school and have the other kids and get dinner ready and have them all in bed at a reasonable time and get her homework done. Like, what? That is stressful. Let me park that. Who needs that life? Like, I don't understand how other parents are doing it. So I haven't entered into that life until this academic year, when I've said, okay, you know what? She has been really patient. She's been asking to do this and do that for a long time. Let's do it. And there are a couple of nights a week where I'm like, yeah, this is why people get stressed, because they're trying to do the most. And not only are you like, right, okay, so what is it you've got to take into school today? You need £1 for what? You need what socks on? You need to be doing this. What time am I picking you up? You're doing what after school? Where do I need to take you? You want to be in what tournament now? You want to join this club? You want, oh, you didn't do the homework. Why didn't you show me the homework? Like, what was I meant to be like that? And then coupled with, I've got to do things with the other kids as well. I'm not surprised people get stressed. And so home educating, I think, has actually stopped me from doing that, because I can march to the beat of my own drum. I could be like, right, we're going to stay in bed till 10 today. We're going to learn loads today, or we're not going to learn anything today, or we're going to just go and play out in nature. Like, we're going to do what works for us and our bodies on this particular day. And that, actually enables me to actually have control over my life and not get stressed.
That's the key, isn't it? Control.
Like, yeah, exactly. And I think it's also like, whilst I said that we're always switched on, I think there's also an element of we're quite decentralized from most things, in a sense that we would do what we want to do when we want to do it, like what's right for our kids and what's right for our family, right? We moved out of London when most of our families lived in and around London, and even that, they were like, what? Like, what? Why are you doing that? Stay local.
So we didn't have to stress and have both of us working full time to live in a place that wasn't going to be adequate for us, and have the stress of not living in a place that we liked, both working, kids in school. So we were like, well, let's just move. And live somewhere that's a bit nicer and less stressful.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of, whilst we're switched on, we're not as switched on as conventionally you would think we'll be switched on. Not like, right, I work in the city and I'm like constantly nailed on, straight on, always. I have the benefit of maybe, okay, I have time with my ideas and I can think about them and I can take time to implement them and kind of maybe go off the radar a little bit and get it done. So, but then there are also times where it's kind of, but they're far and few between, right? They're maybe once a year. Like at the moment, I'm working on a few projects that I'm like, right, if they get delivered, they're going to be life-changing projects. So it's kind of like, okay, let's go now. This is the kind of nailed on moment where you're kind of laser focused and just going in. And then also, like, it's a season. And I think we see everything as a season. There is a season for everything. You can't do everything all at once. So you kind of, now is the season for Nalajah not to be working and for her to look after the kids. And like the home and our husband. And now is the season for me to work. Now, if that season was to change and it was now my turn to kind of stay at home, like, I would also be happy with that. I don't think we ever, we don't prescribe to the norm, I think. And I think, which is why when I tell people sometimes I've got 5 kids, they look at me, they're like, but you look like you've had a full night's sleep. Like, yeah.
And see, that's the thing. This is what I wanted to get to, because when you said that you're always switched on and there isn't those breaks, I was going to come back to you and be like, okay, but I think sometimes when we think about de-stress, looking away from something, we think about something massive like, oh, I'm going on a sabbatical or I'm having a big break or whatever it is. But often the things that actually save us from the chronic stress and help us to actually manage and thrive and continue is actually have those micro moments, especially when you've got like responsibilities of the kids and the work, and you've got to get the finances to buy the bananas and all that kind of stuff. Like, especially when you have all of that, it's the micro moments. So making sure that you have those positive connections, it's making sure that you that you're sleeping well when you can do. It's things like finding some time to pop out to the gym, like Raf saying how important it is for him to do exercise now, because that's like what helps him to function, everything. What time do you have to go to the gym now?
Yeah, 5:30.
So he goes to the gym at 5:30 in the morning. He's not an early bird. It's worth it.
It is worth it, and it actually it helps with the early mornings with the kids and stuff like that. Like, so it's something that I never thought I would do, but like you said, it's taking control. Because I knew that I needed that and I wasn't able to secure it. So I obviously have a long day at work. As a teacher, every day is long. Every day feels like a week. So I get home and it's like, right, okay, I'm supposed to go to the gym now. All right, I can't go to the gym. I've had a bad day. I need to de-stress, but actually I'm just really tired. Whereas flipped it on his head, took that control, go to the gym. I do what I want to do in the morning first. And then obviously I've got those endorphins running around my body. It helps me to kind of deal with I guess more situations than I would. But yeah, so I think I agree. Yeah, taking control, and the fact that you're saying because you homeschool, and you've only got one that is at school. Obviously, there's that demand on one. So like, oh yeah, like you said, the homework. This teacher's asked me to do this. That teacher asked me to do that. Whereas you've only got that for one. When you got 5, and they've all got
all in school. Well, I've got 3 kids of school age. Oh my goodness, I don't know. And then the WhatsApp groups as well.
We're just coming into this.
They're banner. The WhatsApp groups are banner. There's some proper Sallys out there. There's proper banner in the WhatsApp group. I love it. I'm like, let's have a joke here.
Why not?
I've got literally my jokes. And you got to remember that where we are, it's full of, how do I put it? You know what I mean?
I know exactly. Yeah.
So it's kind of like
there's a majority.
Yeah. So the jokes I make, it's like, and then
get the punchline. No, it's lost.
All right. Okay.
So no, I think school, like, obviously, I understand why people are in school. I know it's quite the norm, but I think it is a stressful. It can be stressful.
But I don't understand why people are at school. Like, I mean, everyone do their thing, and I respect that. But I don't genuinely, and I'll be interested to hear what Rafa's got to say as a teacher as well, and the stresses that you see from other parents, right? Because surely, when you look at it, you kind of think, why are we doing this? Why are we subjecting our children to the same cycle? Because that impact and that stress goes on to the parents, who then naturally, and I was watching a program that spoke about some elements of stress are also genetic, where it gets passed down. So why would you carry that line on as a parent if you know that going to school is just going to be a big kerfuffle?
I feel like, well, the main reason school is there so that the parents can obviously make a living. If we didn't need to make a living, if things weren't so expensive, I think a lot more people would homeschool. But then at the same time, a lot of people they're not built for that. like look at the during the pandemic when everyone was at home, and all of a sudden it was like, oh my goodness, you teach my child. Can you please have, like, I was literally I was at work doing wellbeing calls, and I've got parents saying this child won't behave. Can you please talk to them? And some people just aren't. Well, I guess maybe they're just not used to it.
No, but there's also
be
some
able to
people
adapt to it,
who
but
wouldn't, you know, like there's some people that wouldn't educate their child if they were at home with them. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a variety of people, and I think in an ideal world, yes, it would be great, but there are also people that if they were to have their kids at home, their kids wouldn't thrive. I feel like school for some children, unfortunately, school is what is actually helping them to learn and to evolve and have some kind of structure, because from the work that we both do, we see how not every family will be able to actually execute homeschooling. But absolutely what you're saying though, it's understandable, like why would you put your child into that restricted learning environment where that isn't really how children's brains work or minds work. But the reason you went into education and schooling wasn't because you were some great believer in the school system.
No, it's probably more so because I don't believe in the system. So I went in it to be pastoral, to be that role model that I didn't have, to be that advocate for the kids. That's my passion, that's my focus. So I don't really care what I teach, which is just as well because I've taught all sorts of subjects. Even though I've interviewed for one subject, I've done all sorts. But I think even if you look at it the other way, in terms of we're all adults, but some people wouldn't function if they were working from home. Some people have to go to the office.
Some doesn't like working from home.
Well,
yeah,
I don't get anything done.
That's what I mean, and I think so. It suits some, it doesn't suit others. But it would be better if we had a better, I guess, a better infrastructure and more support for people that were homeschooling, instead of people being like, "What, you homeschool?" Like my sister homeschools in Canada.
Yeah, she's got 4 children,
and but then I found like the American and North American way of homeschooling, because when I went to boarding school in France, and there were American homeschoolers and North American homeschoolers, and they were but they were also like, so that was where my first idea of homeschooling came up. I didn't want my kids to turn out like those kids, like, because they were quite, what's the word? They were quite
sheltered,
lacking. Yeah, they were lacking in social ability. Like it just, and I was like, I get the idea of homeschooling, but not like that. So I always found that the American way of homeschooling, or the North American way and the American way of homeschooling, is so different to the way that is done anywhere else.
That's interesting.
Yeah, there's a bigger social element to it, isn't there?
Well, the thing, I think it's changing as well, because you would often see, like, you know, little parodies on films of like the homeschool kid, and they were like pale and didn't know how to talk to anybody. I think it's like it's very much changed now, hasn't it? Like for example, my sister-in-law, Raf's sister, remember once she called us and they were at like this field and there was like so many kids and
it was like a sports day.
Yeah, and she was like, "Oh, we're at sports day." I'm like, you kids are homeschooled, like why are there more than 4 people there? And
like, why are you not in your back garden?
Yeah,
the sports day.
The sports day, but that's that big community. But just to say though, Najira, what you were saying about the control, and like that's so important for stress, and that's what I'm realizing. So before, I was very much on this trajectory where I was like med school, foundation training, GP training. Now I'm a GP, now I've got to become a partner. I was on this trajectory. I didn't have as much control, and I'd made plans about when I was going to have the kids and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like I was on this roller coaster, and the stress would build. My anxiety built up. My well-being was just in the toilet. And then since having like a really difficult season, it's made me start to reevaluate and kind of see life as this blank canvas. And at the start of the year, I literally had no work. I was just like starting from fresh. And my error that I've done and what I'm backtracking now is that because I was trying to build my confidence back and find my feet again, I started like scheduling loads of things, like just adding lots of things to the diary. And I found myself a couple of months ago, well, about a month ago, feeling very overwhelmed and stressed again. I was like, how have I got myself back in this situation? But it's because I was allowing things to dictate my time again, and my control was leaving, even this effort to like regain something. And it's just what you're saying about that, you know, controlling what you can control, what you did, like moving out of London and giving yourself a new environment. And so even though you have that background stress of providing for the kids and making sure that they can be sustained until they can sustain themselves, but you've made those other allowances to allow that control. I think right now I know that me personally, busyness is my problem. I'm always busy. I'm always so busy. Haven't got any time to do anything. And I think that's the same thing for a lot of people, why they can't maybe prioritize their health or their family, or they can't find how they can start homeschool, because it's all so busy. Like, we're just so busy all the time. But having that,
keep up with other people
and keeping up,
and what the world and our society tells us that as parents and professionals in our 30s, like what we should be doing in our lives, whether like you should be buying a home and you should have this many kids and you should have this kind of house and doing this at the weekend and whatever, and it's all been dripped into us from birth. So we try to follow the status quo.
Yeah.
And I've got no interest in following the status quo. Like, when I just remember, like, even when I left my job, I was in my work for 12 years, and I am a hard worker. Like, if I said I'm going to do something, I will do it to the best of my ability. And after those 12 years of leaving, and I remember even at some point people being like, oh my gosh, you're having another child, like, what will work say, and this and that. And I'll be like, who cares? Like, like, this is my life, my family. And I'm so glad that I did have that attitude, because when I left after 12 years, I didn't even get a thank you email, let alone a card or a bunch of flowers or anything like that. And so I was like, and that is exactly why I did not stress myself out over planning my life around my workplace. Like,
I think people need to remember, and I think employers also need to remember as well, that I might be interested in whatever it is that I'm doing, but my main reason for being here is so that I can get paid. Like, let's not forget that.
Yeah, you can never forget that.
Yeah. And then, but then you work with people that are like, oh yeah, but it's not about the money. No, it is. Like,
no, it is about the money.
Yes, that's exactly why we are here. And when it comes to pay review, if you don't get your pay rise,
you kick off.
Show me that same energy. Oh, it's not really about the money. So I think, first of all, people need to remember that I'm here for the money. Second of all, you need to remember, in terms of ego, that I can be replaced in a minute. You're not that important.
Yeah.
When you aren't there and when you leave, or let's say you're off for a period of time, things get done. And when you hand in your notice, before you even left, they're advertising to replace you. Like, and it's absolutely fine. It's okay for that. But it's, I guess, having the, I guess you'd word it differently, but like, put mental control basically to change your way of thinking. And because obviously you spoke about, I guess figuring out whether, well, for me, it's figuring out whether or not do I have control over this, because you were saying that you were going from a degree to training to job and whatnot. For me, I found that if I can't control it, and if I've got a problem, I will see what control I have over it. And if I can't change it, first of all, I'm not going to worry about it, but I'm also going to take myself away from that, and that's the control that I have. So if I can't control this, I can control where I am in relation to that.
That's a skill to be able to do that in itself, because a lot of people, you can recognize the stress and you know what it is that's stressing you out, and you know that there are things you could do, but you don't do it. Or you think you can't do it.
But you
and
know what, this is why, you know, marriage is, when you've got a partner, it's great in those moments, because the amount of times where say one of us has been stressed about something and we're like, how, you know, not knowing what to do and not knowing how to move on from it or whatever. Like, for example, Raf with his job, he was really unhappy in one of the schools that he was teaching in. And it was like, well, what do we do? And we sat down and had the conversation. And within like the next week, he'd applied for a new job. But because you have that support and somebody else that's actually can see the things that can change, because sometimes when you're doing it in isolation and you're like, you said before, and you've worked with people who have been complaining about their job for like, and in the same job for like 17 years, looking at different like job advertisements and not moving and not doing anything. But sometimes when you've got that partnership where, you know, somebody nudges you along or reminds you that you can do this, that you can change, that you are in control, and someone that's on the same wavelength. Because the big thing that you guys do, you don't beat, you beat, what's the phrase? You beat your own drum, you live life to your own beat. I can't remember, but you know, like
the beat of my own drum.
You march the beat of your own drum, but it's great because you're both wanting to do that. Just imagine how it would be if, Donald, you were like, no, I need to stay in London, I need to be on the rat race, and Najwa, you need to be working as well, and we need to, but you're like, no, I want to move to Hertfordshire and I want to homeschool.
Yeah.
Like, it's it's important to be able to come together on it.
Yeah, definitely. And then we also, I mean, a big thing for us is prayer as Christians. We, even when we don't feel, I know there are times when Donald's stressed and I'm like, right, Don, we're going to pray. And I can see he's like rolling his eyes, or like really like, now is not the time. I don't feel like praying. Go on, you pray. And I'm like, no, Don, you pray. You lead us in prayer. And even though he will kind of reluctantly start, I can see just even his attitude and the whole kind of his body language just change as we go through the prayer, and just almost that kind of breathe and just breathe and remember that there is a bigger picture. There is a divine being who is got his hand in all of this, and
things are not that deep. I think like, not, I don't mean it like that. I mean it in a sense that when you go through anything, whether it's stress, work, or whatever, it's not that deep. Like when you really, really, really kind of think about it, it's like, this could be gone tomorrow. Like that's like what you said, Ralph, is I can't control this. It could be gone tomorrow. Like the reality is there are certain people that won't wake up tomorrow morning. Like that's the reality. And when you start, and I remember when I was ill, and I remember being on literally on the deathbed and just being like, rah, like this is it. Like there's nothing else that matters apart from I'm gone. I'm literally gone. So when you think about it, like whether you have a nice car, whether you live in a big house, whether you live in a small house, it does not really matter. It doesn't matter. Like you just got to make the most of what you have, control the things you can, and don't worry about the things you can't. It's literally just like that. And it puts it into perspective. Like when you get to that, when I got to that moment, everything was in the perspective. And when I remember coming out of hospital thinking, right, there's nothing I can't do. I am my own limit in a sense that if I want to do something, I'm just going to get up and get it done. It's if I can control it, you know.
Don came out of hospital with wild ideas for life, like, and I was like, no, like steady on. Like, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to get that, and to go here, and he just wanted to live. That what was this nonsense that we thought we were living before? That wasn't living. No. Let's actually start to live.
And when you start to live, you're like, everything becomes so much brighter every day. You wake up with like, and I said this to my brother, and I said to my brother, I challenge you to spend 1 week just getting up and being like, I'm gonna do the wildest things I want to do with no limits. And then at the end of that week, you will realize how much more you've achieved. Without putting your own, because we put our own boundaries to things, right? And sometimes it takes us to go to the edge of something to realize that we're at the edge, and after that there is nothing. So yeah, it's sorry, my son is coughing. He's got that. But yeah, it's for me, it was kind of that part of it. Whilst I remember being in hospital and just being like, God, like I'm ready to die, but this can't be it, man. Like, come on. I want to live. I want to go and climb a mountain. I want to go and just even walk. I just want to walk.
Yeah.
Just like those little things. I don't know. I just want to drive. I just want to like control the little things, nothing grand,
Yeah.
just the little things. I just want to look outside and look out the window. I hadn't seen the outside for so long. I was like, I just want to see the sunrise and the sunset and just even the clouds, even just people walking around with no PPE on.
Yeah,
Like,
just see faces and hands and skin. Yeah.
Like, whoa. Like it was just, but yeah, and I guess it's just that whole idea and notion of we can get to so much of a level of stress that society wants us to get to, but then wants us to get to so that we forget ourselves. And when you get into that, that's what we call the rat race, right? Where you're literally running because everyone else is running around you and you don't even know why you're running.
Oh, absolutely. And so just so for the listeners, just have a little bit of context of that. So what, you were quite unwell. This was like, tell us a bit more about what happened at the time.
Okay. Yeah, so back in 2021, I went, well, actually, my whole ordeal started in August 2020, when we'd just come out of lockdown. I just signed for a football club, and I'd gone and done a pre-season at that football club, and I played like 2 or 3 games. And on the 3rd game, I snapped my patella tendon, like in my left leg. So I was like, oh man. So at snap, I'm like, at this stage, I'm like 35. I'm like, I've got one good season before I have to start playing vet football. So I need to sign for this football, and I snapped my patella tendon, and I'm like, oh no. So I've had an operation. I'm laid up. I can't move. And then the following year, around February time, I got made redundant. And then my cousin died at the end of that month in February. So I now have to travel back home, like wonky leg, right, on my own. We'd planned to go back home, the whole family, that Easter, but I had to just go as an emergency because she passed away.
Yeah.
And all the rest of it. So I've traveled with my mum and my brother, and I'm in Cameroon. And then I contracted cerebral malaria when I came back. So I came back a month later, and for the first 10 days, it was when you would have to quarantine for 10 days when you got home.
Yeah.
So for those 10 days, I was like, oh, I don't feel great, but some days I'll feel good, some days I won't feel good. But then eventually, after the 10 days, I remember we went to a photo shoot that Black Mums Upfront had with Nike, I think. And I just felt a bit rough that weekend. And then on the Monday, I was in bed, and I was supposed to take my daughter to school, or you were going to London or something, weren't you? And I just couldn't get out of bed. I had been hallucinating. I was talking about some airport or some like pack your bags at the airport or something. I don't know what was that. And then the ambulance people came, and it turned out when I went to hospital, I was going in and out of consciousness. I had cerebral malaria, so the virus was eating away at my brain. And this is what was making me go in and out of consciousness. And some days I feel good, some days I wouldn't. It then meant that my whole left side was paralyzed. And this was like the 10th, 11th of April or something. So I was in hospital, UCLH for like 2 or 3 weeks. and then went into a residential home to learn how to walk again. But they could only visit me through perplexed glass because it was COVID. So I was there for what, 8 weeks?
Yeah, something like that. I remember when they called me, so I thought he was just going to, because I had hardly visited him in hospital again because of COVID stuff, but also looking after the kids.
Yeah, how many kids did you have at that time?
Pardon?
How many kids did you have at that point?
4. So the youngest had just turned 1 at that time. And so I couldn't really go often to visit.
Yeah.
And when they called me to say, oh, okay, he's not going to be coming home. He's now going to a rehab center. So I was like, what? I was like, are you joking? Like, can he really not move? Like, I didn't believe what they were saying. Yeah. And so then they said, okay, and he'll be here like for the first 2 weeks. And I was like, what do you mean first 2 weeks? How long is you? And I remember I was with my mum at the time, and my jaw just hit the ground. Like, oh wow, like Don's really in a bad way. And again, this is my thing of not really stressing, not really seeing the situation. He was unwell, but I don't think I'd really considered just how unwell he was. Or I thought, okay, the malaria has kind of gone from his body, but I didn't think about the repercussions of the malaria, what it had done. So I was like, oh, he's on the road to recovery. Like, nah, the guy's paralyzed. Like, he can't move. And they were talking about having to come here. I had to give them measurements of the home because they wanted to fit in like a stair chair thing.
Stair lift,
and can they fit in a shower room downstairs and all, and he's gonna have a carer. And I was like, what are they talking about?
even that morning before they came and took me to hospital, like,
I'm like, get up and
like,
help me with the kids.
Get up and help me with the kids. I was
man flu you've got.
I was like, I really can't. Like, I don't feel great.
So what you're saying is COVID wasn't challenging enough, so you just thought, I'll go malaria.
Wait till I tell you the second story. So that was the first one.
That was April.
That was June. April to June.
Comes out.
I come out middle of June, late June. I get COVID.
Oh my goodness!
But my immune system has been so
of course
by the malaria that the COVID has a party, basically a fiesta in my body, right? And to the point where I'm literally on pretty much this close to being on life support. And it's just and I remember going in, I think it was a Thursday, and I remember saying, I don't feel great. I'm calling a friend of mine, and she said to me, oh, have you done your blood oxygen? I said, yeah. And she said, what is it? And I said, oh, it's 70.
Oh my gosh.
And you're
70.
She's like, you're at home. She's like, are you dead? I'm like, no. She's like, you need to.
You were talking
like now.
Wow.
And so then when he told
70, so someone that has like chronic lung disease, and their stats will be between 88 and 92. That's someone with chronic lung disease. So most people should be between 94 and 98. You were 70, and you were talking on the phone. Wow.
Literally, I every step up the stairs was like I needed to rest. I needed to, like, one step, I need to sit down and rest. And even just getting up from sitting down was like.
And again, I didn't notice it. I mean, I knew that he had some kind of man flu. I wanted him to get over it. Like, come on, I've just done 3 months without you. Like, can we get back to normal life? And he's like, oh, no, Nadia, I think you need to call me an ambulance. And I was like, why? And he said, like, because I just think I need to go to hospital. And at this time, I knew that when people went into hospital with COVID, many weren't coming out.
I had a friend who the week before had died from pretty much the same.
So when he told me that, I was like, I didn't want to say to him, like, you do understand what this could mean, because I didn't want to scare him or scare myself. But I just kept saying, are you sure? Are you sure you really think you need to go to hospital? And he was like, yeah, he was really calm about it. He was like, yeah, I need to go. And I just went into the bar. I was like, okay, 1 second. I went into the toilet and I just sobbed. Because to me, my husband's gone.
Whilst I'm dying on the sofa.
Yeah.
Still not calling the
before you
ambulance.
called the ambulance.
I literally just sobbed because I just thought he's a goner. Like, that's it. And then kind of composed myself, came back out, called the ambulance. And I just remember sitting on the sofa next to him when they were coming when they were taking him. Again, I didn't want to kind of alarm him, but I was just trying to give him a little hug. And the kids were just running around like maniacs as they do. And I was like, oh, kids, and bear in mind, they've kind of got used to Donald being away at this point. He's been home a matter of weeks. So I was like, oh, Daddy's just going into hospital. Do you want to come and say bye? I thought he was going to die. Like, come and say bye to your dad. They were like, oh, okay, bye, Daddy, running around. Like, so I just thought, you know what, leave them. And off we went. And we all had COVID. The whole family had COVID, but we weren't like dying with it. Nothing like that. But it was a time when you isolated for 2 weeks. So whilst Donald was very, very ill in hospital, we were all isolating at home. And yeah, nobody could come to us. We couldn't go to anyone. And so that was probably a stressful, that was a stressful time for me, because
you were working at the time, was that right?
I was working, but the moment he went into hospital, I was like,
peace out.
And shut the laptop down. And work were brilliant, absolutely brilliant about that.
They still didn't get your car winning.
They still didn't get me a car. Still waiting for that 2 years later.
But no, when I think it just got progressively worse when I got to hospital. And I just remember, I think day 3 in the hospital, day 4, them being like, yeah, you're pretty much on the way out. We need to take you to ICU. Because if we don't do that, because the oxygen level had just got progressively worse, I was on more of it.
But they called me, so if it goes down to 60, they were going to take him. And then within about half an hour, they're like, oh yeah, it's gone down. We're taking him to ICU. And again, I didn't want to ask. I was trying to say, basically, is he going to die? Without saying, is he going to die? And they knew that's what I was trying to say as well, but they were trying to skirt around it and be as positive as they can. And I knew, it was a horrible time. Like, honestly, like, if I think back to it now, it was horrible. I don't think the kids would have felt it so much because they were just happy-go-lucky around the house. But I remember not knowing, all I could do was clean, and I kept watching YouTube videos about cleaning and tidying. What kept going through my head, and I know this is so ridiculous, maybe this is my coping mechanism. I can't have my husband die and have a messy home at the same time. And it sounds nuts, but that was the way I kind of kept my sanity. I have to tidy up. I need to tidy. I can't have both. I can't be dealing with a chaotic house and chaotic life. And so I spent that week or whatever it was just tidying and decluttering and tidying and tidying. And I don't think I could pray. I didn't have any words to pray. I didn't know what to pray. I just listened to praise music and listened to worship music, but I couldn't pray myself. I didn't have the words.
And the thing is, often in those moments, though, it's the power of the people around you praying for you. And also that God knows your heart. No, like he's there to provide, isn't he?
Fully. And I remember one person getting in touch. Because as word gets around, you start hearing from people you haven't heard from for years and years and years, which was lovely at the same time. And one person saying, would you mind if my prayer was God's will be done? And I was like, obviously, I wanted people to be praying.
Heal.
And when they said, can I pray that God's will be done? Oh my gosh, my heart hurt that day. But I knew ultimately I had to say, like, you pray that. I'm praying something else, but you pray that. You do you. And I mean, look, he's home now.
And see, that's the thing in it, what you were saying about the perspective that you had when you came out and how that perspective helps you going forward when you've gone through something like that. And that's the big thing with stress, isn't it? It's about stress, there isn't a definition of what a stressful thing is. It's all about the way that you perceive it, and doing as much as you can, because those stressful things will come like with no control. You might have like, put everything in place that you can, and you get malaria, and then you get COVID, and like, what on earth do you do when those things happen? But the whole point of it is that you also put things in place to help you cope with that. Your faith, the fact that you had people around you that was praying for you, and the fact that you were already, living off the beaten track, and so that when you came out with this new perspective and everything, you could put those things into action as well. But I know, honestly, this has been such a great conversation. It's gone in all different directions, and I really hope that the people that have been listening have gained something from it. I know that I definitely have. So thank you for finding the time, because I know how busy life will be with 5 kids. But yeah, thank you for sharing.
Your story,
I know. Listen, there's actually so much more that I would want to talk about. I could go on for another half an hour talking about what happened in hospital. I could go on in terms of
I could tell you. I'll tell you one funny
there's
story
so much
that happened is which one? Okay. When I went into A&E with COVID, you get diarrhea, right? When you first have COVID. So I'm sitting in A&E, and I'm waiting, and I'm like, oh, I need to fart.
Oh no!
Oh
so
no!
And it's like, no, what's happened?
So and Amy will leave you sitting there for hours.
So I was like, no. I was like, right, despite all of this not breathing stuff, I've got to change myself. I can't go through this. So I was like, nah, but it's real. It's real. That's what happened. Like,
that's stress.
People, like having
that stress
on myself. So I literally, it's kind of like you just need to. But even when I got to when I went into ICU, and the lady comes around and she goes, right, we've got to do a COVID swab. I'm like, okay, cool. She's like, turn around. I'm like, what do you mean turn around? She's like, no, we're doing an English. I was like,
oh, right. I didn't. Oh.
I was like,
oh, right.
Unexpected.
Excuse you?
Like, isn't this a respiratory problem?
She's like, turn around. I'm like, nah.
Every time they wanted to like shower him or whatever, he'd be like, I've got a wife, My wife will come and do it.
Literally. And I remember
at home with the 4 kids.
I said, just let them do it. Like, just let them. And he was like, no, you come.
After like 3 days, I was like, right, I'm gonna go and get in the shower. I need to wash myself. Like, I haven't had a shower.
Yeah.
So I just mean my oxygen tank. I'm like, cool. Like, they're like, no, you won't be able to do it. Like, I'm like, well, man, I got this. Take my oxygen tank. I walk into the shower. I take the oxygen off. Straight to the floor.
Okay, you come shower me.
I was like,
yeah, okay, come help me.
You better get someone in here real quick.
Help me, please.
There were so many anecdotes and stories like that. That once back on it, I can laugh. At the time, like, oh my days! I remember just watermelon. I remember I said to my mom, "I want watermelon," and my mom is a proper, like, typical African mom. She's like, "I don't care. It's my son. Whether he's got COVID, I'm gonna come and sit with him." She's like, "I don't need none of these gloves and nothing. It's my son." So she turned up every day. They won't let her in. She turned up every day.
Yeah.
Watermelon, to the point where around my whole room, I had like boxes of watermelon. Around. Oh,
just to remind you, so every time you see a watermelon, you'll be reminded how much your mum loves you. There you go.
Yeah, no, there's so much. I want to hear your story. I want to hear.
Yeah, you know what? We need to get part 2. We have to have a part 2 because there's more conversation to have, definitely. But I've really enjoyed it. I hope you guys have too.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, thank you. Yes, and these conversations, this is a great de-stressor as well. Just talking and laughing and sharing, it's an important thing to do as well. So I hope some of you guys get together with some friends and have a conversation as well. And have a great evening. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Okay, thank you so much for listening, watching. I know that was a longer episode, but I'm hoping that you were as hooked and engaged in that conversation as I was. Thank you again to Nanajua and Donald for joining us. And of course, to Raf, my glamorous co-host, for joining me for the conversation as well. Please leave in the comments down below what you got from it. I think I didn't realise how much they had gone through. Before we got onto the call, I didn't realise all of the issues, the health issue. Oh, I just didn't know. I didn't know. And it was just so amazing because they are such a team, the way that they work together. And I really enjoy the things that they shared about their faith. I think a lot of the time when you are thinking about expanding your family and having more kids, especially at this season of like this time, this modern life, we often think about all the resources that we have or don't have. And it was just incredible that they just really leave the size of their family to God and the faith that they have in that. The fact that they've said that every time they add another child, they always, seem to be able to get what they need and have abundance, even if on paper they may seem like they might struggle. And also what they said, that after each child, even knowing that they may have more kids, they still give their things away because they just have that trust in God. And so, yeah, it was incredible. So thank you again to everyone that watched. If you want to follow along with Nanajua and Donald, and also I'm really excited that since the episode's recorded, Black Moms Upfront podcast has come back from their hiatus and they posted their first episode of 2024. And so I'm actually going to link that in the show notes and in the description box down below. So make sure you check that out for all of the links. And thank you for watching. Make sure that you like, subscribe, that you share. If you're listening to this on audio platforms, we're on Apple and Spotify. Make sure that you are following along. And if you want to see all of our beautiful faces, you can find us on YouTube as well at under the YouTube channel Life with Dr. Amanda. But I will see you next week, and I will share with you what my New Year's, what my 2024 goals are. Bye.